Welcome to the Finance Geeks Podcast with Paul Cluth and Warren Shute. Two financial planners shoot the breeze while sharing tips for making the most of your money and living your best life. Expect a lot of laughs and genuine insights that might just transform the way you look at your finances. Remember to follow, like, and subscribe to the show. And now over to the geeks in the studio, but they are not in a studio, they are geeks in their own office.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Finance Geek Podcast. Thanks for joining us. My name is Warren Shute and I'm here joined by
Paul Cluth.
Brilliant. Today we're geeking out and talk about all things tax efficient investing. But we're geeking out for the second time, aren't we, Paul?
We are, yes. Last Friday's recording wasn't quite great. There was errors in it, wasn't there? It just didn't. Yeah. The software, malfunction, disaster. So doing it again.
I think it was me. I don't know what happened, but it didn't work. But we're here. We're committed, and we're here doing rerun. And hopefully, it's as good as the last one because the last one was brilliant. It was excellent. So anyway, yes. nothing to live up to. Anyway, what have you been up to, Paul?
So it's been a busy week. Yeah, I know that you've been very busy as well. I've been doing a bit of gym work recently, which I'm pleased about. My legs are still killing me from Wednesday. I did this sort of CrossFit thing. I like doing just the weights, but actually I did a lot of jump lunges and front bar squat and that sort of stuff. And I'm just getting older, so it takes longer to recover. But on Wednesday, I drove.
You should record it for you doing those exercises in the gym for the listeners.
Yes. I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to send it to you as a video. This was me in the gym. Let me show you how to do the exercise properly. Yeah, I'll mansplain it to you, how we actually do the exercise. But I have an amazing sort of fitness coach who comes once a week called Juan. He's one of my clients, awesome bloke. And he's, he puts me through my paces and he pushes me harder than I would do if I was just there on my own. So I sort of need the motivation, I think. Cool. Just on Wednesday, this is another couple of things. I flew up to Scotland Wednesday morning because it was my younger sister's 30th birthday. So that was lovely. Wednesday night, went out in Edinburgh with my family and there was 10 of us in total. And then, it was great. Nice. I tell you what, flying up was fine. We got the train back though, and it was really quite relaxing. The train back 4.5 hours down to London. It was great.
Can you fly from Luton up there? So
we did. Luton Airport is 15 minutes from my house. So it's just getting through security. Once you're through there, I did carry on. And then got through no problem, and it was all good.
I went up once with Nikki up to Edinburgh, and we went from Birmingham, and went on one of those airplanes, the propellers, and it's a little bit hairy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was all right. It was okay. It's absolutely fine, but I don't think I've ever been on a propeller airplane before. So going up from Birmingham to Edinburgh, went to see the rugby. It was good. And thankfully, Scotland won, which is odd. England-Scotland game. Thankfully, Scotland won because the atmosphere of Scotland was fantastic afterwards. It was great. It's good.
No,
good. It's nice.
I should spend more time in Edinburgh. It's, as you say, it's really nice, and the old buildings, and the sort of the town centre. I mean, there's lots to see, isn't there? It's great. Warren, what have you been up to recently?
Well, as it country to country, so went to see my favourite band, Old Dominion. They're playing at the O2 Country, which was great. Absolutely loved it. Support acts were interesting too. They were good, but I'm really glad I saw those.
And where was that? Where did you see them?
At the O2 in London.
Oh God, that's a bit of a way for you, isn't it?
Not really. So I get the train into Paddington. It's about an hour. And then just get the Jubilee line or the Elizabeth line going across town. It's all right. It's okay. We do it quite a lot. I'm down.
Don't you find that the O2? Don't you find the O2 so big that you could just if you're right at the back, you're almost better off watching them on TV? Or is the atmosphere good enough to warrant going?
No, you go for the atmosphere. It's the sound, is it? The atmosphere. I absolutely love it. I do. Do I love it? I really like it. I do agree with you. It can be too big. I prefer smaller concerts. But the thing is, these guys don't come over for anything less. There's a country concert in Hyde Park in June. But Nikki's already signed me up for Gregory Porter in Cardiff. So I'm not sure I'm going to that. But we'll see. See if I can talk my way out.
That's a bit different, isn't it? Gregory Porter, that's jazz, isn't it? Compared to country.
That's Nikki. I don't mind him, but that's Nikki's kind of thing. Whereas I'd rather go down to... to go down to the Hyde Park and listen to Bella, my daughter, and I would like to go to the country concert, whereas my son Ollie and Nikki would rather go and see Gregory.
Have you ever done proms in the park at Hyde Park?
No. Is it good?
Not done that. No, it's great. We did it a couple of years in a row with my family back in 2002, 2003. Proms in the park's lovely. Yeah, if you get a good day and you get lucky,
Yeah.
have a picnic and it's great fun. What were you saying about Bella?
She's just left this morning for her DV Gold expedition practice run. So she'll be out away for 4 days, 3 nights. Self-sufficient, carries all her own food and everything else, carries the tent, and she's doing 23 kilometers a day. So
Really?
she's 7.
That's an effort. That is.
It is. She's 17, and my son did it as well. And anyone listening who's got young children, and also for yourself, Paul, really have a look at the Duke of Edinburgh Award. It's fantastic. It really challenges them, gets them to get involved with charities and contribution and sort of striving for things. And it's good. Yeah. It's really good. They've both done it. Ollie's done it, and Bella's just going through a gold now. So
Wow. So you have to do bronze and silver to do gold, do you?
You don't have to. No, you can go straight to gold. But I said to them, look, do the program, do bronze, silver, gold. You get the experience. Some people do it to get the outcome. I said, don't do it to get the outcome. Do it to become to what it becomes. It's going to make you a better person for doing it. Okay, so if you just
go
for
the version of yourself.
Yeah, you just jump to the result, and you don't really want. It's not about putting it on your CV when you're going for university entrance or jobs and things. It's about what you learn and who you become yourself. When you're wild camping on your own, in the middle of the Brecons or wherever you're doing it, it's 17 years old. It's pretty hairy, especially if the weather's howling. And in fact, when Ollie did his, he was out there. The wind was right, and he said, "It was pretty tough." I just remember what Charlie Walker, Charlie Walker would say something like that. So he just got his head down and did it. But yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Highly recommend it. I wish I'd done it. It wasn't around when I did it, but they love it. And she's gone off today, and she'll have loads of stories when she comes back. So
very good. Talking to Charlie, we've got we're using Charlie we've got an event with him in May for some of our clients. And we've booked out a place in London called The Cross, and we've got 30 tickets. And Charlie Walker's an explorer, as you know, and an adventurer. So I'm really looking forward to that. You've heard him speak before as well, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. He's spoken at the Financial Planning Conference. I'm trying to think if he's spoken to our clients, but he's also spoken at the kids' school. We got him into the school, so that'd be if he's good. Why don't you sponsor him, get him into your kids' school, and get him speaking to the kids? That's what I like. Trying to inspire those children to think that. There's more to life outside of their local town and their local school, what they can get up to. And he's very good. Yeah, he's very good.
He's ridden around the world on a bike, hasn't he? He's ridden around the world on a bicycle, like 53,000 kilometers or something.
He did. He went from Salisbury to Nordkap, out to China, across down to the South Cape, and then back, all on foot. Wow. Bike and a bit of pony, I think, a bit of donkey. But yeah, he's got some good books. They're really good. He's a great guy, fascinating. His life is so far removed from mine. I almost become a bit of a stalker because I find it so interesting what he does. So definitely. Hey, so Paul, what's hot off the press this week?
So, what's not off the press anymore, because we're a week on, is the budget, which was on the 6th of March. And that feels like forever ago now. That was, 18 days ago? No, 16 days ago. Yeah, I can do the maths. There was not that much that Jerry Munt could do. Didn't have a lot of leeway either way to raise taxes or reduce them. But as you know, interest rates, and national insurance has come down another 2p. And I heard recently in the paper there's talk that it might come down another 2p. That'll be 6p eventually, if it happens. So, and I think that it's possible because inflation, the latest rates now is that it's down to 3.4%, and they reckon it might get down to 2%, which is the sort of government target by the middle of this year. And if it does, that's positive because prices have been, getting away with us. They were double digits at one point, and of course the other part of the press news is just recently the Bank of England have left interest rates on hold at 5.25%, but there's a bit of speculation that they'll perhaps start to come down as well later in the year, ever so slightly, which is good for those with mortgages and so forth. So,
yeah, mortgages, company valuations tend to increase when interest rates come down. So the discount rate, interest rates come down, company valuations go up. So it's good for economics, good for investing. It's good all round, really. I hope they don't go down I don't think they will. Hope they don't go down as low as they were, because they just lose any leverage to stimulate the economy. It's nice to have interest rates at a healthy level, say 3% or so, so that they can then drop them if things slow down somewhat.
What else did you see in the budget?
I think the main headline that I picked up on that a lot of people haven't really spoken about is the second property capital gains tax rate. So we all know we pay capital gains tax at 10 and 20%. When it's a second property, it's 18 and 28%, but that 28% is coming down to 24%. So there's a lot of people, we've certainly got a lot of clients with buy-to-let properties. They don't know what to do. The regulation's a lot stricter on buy-to-lets. Buy-to-lets are not as attractive as they used to be. And although the demand's there, I think there's an awful lot of demand. People are sort of being turned off by buy-to-let. So I'm not a huge rental fan. I'm not a great fan of people owning second properties and things like that. So it might be a nice opportunity to reconsider it. I was reading on a tax report the other day, the consideration of whether you sell now, get the higher capital gains tax allowance and pay the higher tax rate, or sell after April and get the lower capital gains tax allowance and get the lower tax rate.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, by the time this airs and everything else, and by the time people are considering selling, they'll have no option but to sell in the new tax year anyway. But it depends on the size of your gain, basically.
It does. Do you know, I in the past, it used to be that CGT was at 20 and 40%, and then it brought it down. And over the last sort of 10 years or so, talking about second homes and properties, I've sort of sold a couple of buy-to-lets that we had over the years, and just felt that with property prices as high as they are generally, with interest rates as high as they are, and as you say, how tax inefficient, we're going to talk about how to invest tax efficiently in a minute, but how tax inefficient holding property is. You've got no liquidity because it takes 3 months plus to sell. And then there's a lot of tax to pay, especially if you're a higher rate taxpayer, on the income that you receive. You only get basic rate tax relief on the interest, but you can't offset all the interest like you used to do as an expense. And you've got the extra 3% on purchase as well. So it's I don't think it's a bad thing, because there are definitely a lot of people that have multiple homes, but then there's a lot of people that don't have a home at all. So we're not building houses quick enough in the country. And I feel terrible for those people who have bought houses where they're locked. It's either gone down in value and they're negative equity, or they've got the sort of cladding or cement mix that they can't sell the property and they're stuck. It's definitely not on.
Yes. But, what you just said there leads us on nicely to our main focal point this week, which is how to be a tax efficient geek.
So I thought when I was researching this, and I just thought, I'm gonna, being a geek, I'm going to have a look at how many different taxes there are in the UK, and I couldn't find a definitive number. I could see a couple of websites and you'd think HMRC might have them all, and they have a list of various ones, but there's a lot of sort of stealth taxes and smaller taxes, but there's at least 21 different types of tax, and the biggest ones are income tax, national insurance, capital gains tax, and VAT, and sort of after that, corporation tax. But the amount that we pay in tax now is huge. It's something like 37% of GDP is all in taxation. It's a massive amount. And have a guess, Warren, how much approximately the HMRC take in tax in a year?
Oh my God, I wouldn't have a
from
clue.
all forms of tax.
I honestly, I wouldn't have a clue.
So it depends where you look, because for last year, for 22-23, it says on their site that it's about 788 billion. So let's say rounded up 800 billion, 8,000 million pounds. But they're spending a lot more than that. So the UK's got a national debt of about 2.6 trillion. And, with interest rates as high as they are, the amount of money that's used to service just that debt in itself is enormous. So it's there's all these different types of tax. And I found that because the levels of taxation in the UK are quite high, as a sort of approximate percentage for everybody, it's about 37% in terms of all your income and then what you actually earn and what you spend money on. Because it's circular, isn't it? You pay, most people are PAYE, pay as you earn. They pay tax at source, income tax and national insurance. They receive money's net, and then they buy things that have got tax on them. So they've got VAT on them and fuel duty and wine and cigarettes and all these sort of things. And then the company that's received that money pays corporation tax on their money. So it just keeps going round. And it's
you're depressed.
I just find that there's a bit of resentment. I know it's easy to sort of say, I don't want to pay any tax. Well, the solution is well, I don't know what it is from a political point of view to try and rectify and right the ship. But I think that talking about tax efficient investing, the first thing you can do is you can make use of your two main allowances for taxation relief. And I think we can agree that the most tax efficient vehicle that you can allocate your monies to is a pension. So, the main reason for that is because you're getting your marginal rate of tax back on your contributions, whether you pay it at source and you get all your relief at source via salary sacrifice or net pay arrangement. But if you're paying into a pension personally, you're going to get 20% at source and then your marginal rate back. And to get up to 45% tax relief on a vehicle, albeit you can't access it for retire till 55, going up to 57 from April 2028, that's a good thing because it's for the future.
Well, let me jump in. Also say potentially 60% back. And we'll give that as a cliffhanger, and we'll explain the tax trap on that in a bit later. But you're absolutely right. I think pensions are probably, since the sort of pension freedom rules came in, the most tax efficient vehicle that you can do. And if you don't like the word pension, try a retirement trust or something. Siphoning money off, transferring money away from your own bank account into this investment vehicle to build funds up tax free for the future is absolutely fantastic. Saves income tax.
The subject of pensions is complicated, isn't it?
Yes. Pensions are incredibly complicated, which is a shame in itself, really. I think all taxation, all things are very, very complicated. So anyway, we got the pensions, which I think is a great vehicle for people to do. What else have we got?
So the next thing after a pension, after you squirreled away money for your longer term, second life, if you like, is an ISA, an individual savings account. To be very clear, you'd think the ISA rules would be really easy to understand, but actually they're not as easy, to be honest. I think it's the confusion is in some of the terminology. Like it is an individual savings account, so you can't have a joint one. You can't put company money into it; it has to be personal money. Every person over 18 gets £20,000 allowance per tax year. But there are different types of ISA. So it's what it used to be. There used to originally be sort of an insurance ISA, a stocks and shares ISA, and a cash ISA. Now it's just ISA. And this concept that you can put part of it in cash, part in investments or stocks and shares, bonds inside the same ISA, it's confusing. Because I have clients that have cash ISAs and they don't realize they can transfer them into an investment ISA. So I prefer the term investment ISA. And I think that if you're going to use an ISA to invest, don't put money in cash. Get it invested in global equities, ideally. Think of it as a sort of 10-year vehicle at least. And that, yes, you could have access to it, which is both a good and a bad thing. And in terms of the tax position, there's no income tax on any of the income that it generates. That is interest on cash or fixed income on bonds or dividend income on equities. So and you don't have to put it on your tax return. And then there's no capital gains tax either on any gains. So it's just everybody, if they can, should start their method of investing once they've topped up out of pensions. It's a sort of balancing out between pensions for the long term and ISAs for the medium term, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. And you've hit the nail on the head. I think pensions probably trump slightly, but the advantage that we got with an ISA is the money grows tax-free, exactly the same. But at the other end, when we take the money out, it's also tax-free. So if we look at where tax rates are today, arguably 20% income tax rate for a basic rate taxpayer is pretty modest. If basic rates start going up, if tax rates start going up in the future, we've got a tax-free vehicle to take money out in retirement. So we've got, when we're financial planning, we're diversifying on investments, but we're also diversifying on tax wrappers and accounts as well. But it is hard to trump a pension because it grows tax-free and it sits outside of your estate for inheritance tax, whereas the ISA grows tax-free, but it's still within your estate for inheritance tax. So
and that's a really good point to make as well. That concept that a pension's outside of the estate, I think is perhaps misunderstood or not fully understood. But your inheritance tax is a type of tax where the type of clients we work with that have reasonable amount of assets, they're more concerned about, and there are things you can do which we'll come on to about mitigating inheritance tax. It's classed as a voluntary tax, the same as capital gains tax. You can marshal your affairs to legitimately mitigate that tax. But anyway, not to confuse the matter, I wanted to mention that the ISA 20 grand, the pension 60,000 per annum, unless you earn over £260,000 and then it starts to taper. But it's a lot of money for someone annually to make use of those two vehicles. You don't really need to confuse the matter by saying, well, what else is there besides ISAs and pensions? For most people, that's enough. They just don't need all of the esoteric wrappers.
And I think a really important point to make, especially if you're a parent listening, you can start a pension for a newborn baby. So I do these education talks in schools and workplaces. And one of the slides, I won't remember the actual figures, but one of the slides is if your parents had invested your child benefit from birth until age 18, I think it is, and then left the money invested and you access the money at age 67, have a guess of how much money you'd have in your pension account.
2 million? What 1.5 million?
Yeah, and do you know what? And that's exactly what I do. I actually preface this with a previous example, and it's about that sort of figure. So they say 2 million. It's about 6-point-something million pounds.
Wow,
it's incredible. Wow. It's an incredible amount of money. Absolutely, it's the beauty of compound growth.
Yeah, so you can pay up to £3,600 gross, 2,880 net for a child up until they've got taxable income or relevant earnings to actually put more in. But you've got to want to just if you've got surplus monies and you're a parent who's already filled their own ISA and pension and they want to allocate monies elsewhere, yes, they can put money into a pension for their children, knowing that it's not theirs and the child can't access it till what will be 57 under the new rules. Do you know that I like to talked about the 4 main tax wrappers. When I talk to clients and they come to me and they say, I've got X amount of money to invest. We first of all, look at paying down debt and topping up cash. And after that, we fill ISAs, fill pensions. The 3rd and 4th wrappers, which I think are relevant, are the general investment account, which is a sort of brokerage account, a non-tax wrapper. You're buying the assets, the underlying assets, whether it's unit trusts or OICs or funds, as we say, directly. So yes, there's income tax and CGT to pay on those. But and then the 4th one is probably a bond, an on or offshore bond. For me, it's often offshore bonds, which are a bit more, arguably more tax efficient for in certain situations. Yeah. So those 4 vehicles are the main ones.
But so like you said, so you sell your business or you come into inheritance. The step 1 is, okay, let's make sure we're tax efficient and we maximize out your pensions. So we've got the money there. Main benefit behind that is you're getting tax breaks, income tax breaks on the money going in, but then also the money's wrapped up and it's outside of your estate for inheritance tax. It makes good sense to make sure we've got some money in ISAs. We can't back fund ISAs, unfortunately, but we can put money in ISAs. But then we might want to drip feed and put money into ISAs every year thereafter. So that's where we come to use the account that you mentioned called the general investment account. And the general investment account, as you said, any income due on that can be potentially taxable, and any gains over your capital gains tax allowance stuff are potentially capital gains taxable as well.
But you can use your CGT allowance, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, you have a capital gains tax allowance, which is becoming less valuable. What was it? 12,300. It's currently 6,000. It's going down to 3,000 in April. So it's getting less and less attractive. But the tax rates that you pay on capital gains are lower. So 10% when it takes your total income up to about 50,000, or 20% when it goes over that.
It's a good thing to pay CGT, doesn't it? It's a good thing to pay capital gains tax. It means you've made a decent gain. If you're using all your allowances and you're paying CGT, it's not the end of the world, So it's
absolutely, But a bit of clever planning, working with a planner, you can do a thing called tax loss harvesting. So investments don't just go up in a linear fashion; they go down. So when they go down, you can realize that by what we call a mirror fund or a mirror investment. So you realize this loss, and then when you realize this loss, you can just carry this loss forward to offset gains in future years. And we're just doing an exercise literally at this moment. For a client who realized a loss a couple of years ago, carrying it forward, just offsetting against the gains to mitigate it. So it's not, the end of the world, and they're nice, clean, easy to understand vehicles that can be easily used to fund future contributions into ISAs and in pensions.
We're talking about the strategy. I really like that because we tend to use Transact as our preferred platform of choice, and because we're linking husband, wife, and kids on there at the back end. We can move money with their permission between husband and wife, and we can use each of their CGT allowances, sweep monies from their general accounts to their ISAs, sometimes to their pension from there, and make use. And this is the thing, the benefit of using an advisor who's on the ball with this, especially at this time of year, February, March, make sure you fill all your allowances before the 6th of April, which is the new tax year, because yes, you can backfill pensions using what's called carry forward, but you can't use your CGT allowance from last year, or you can't use your ISA allowance from the previous year. If you miss it, that's it. Poof. So on the term of ISAs, do you want to tell us the different types of ISAs that there are?
God, no.
Elaborate on that.
There's too many.
You don't want... Do you use junior ISAs for your clients?
Yes, yeah, a lot. Some of the times. We have an acronym, now, then, them. So it's like, let's make it secure today, make sure everything's sorted out with our emergency cash and life insurance, etc. on that, make sure our future's secured. Then we focus on others and, doing things like that. We do them, but not, not massive amounts of them. But lost my train of thought. I was going to tell you something about I've lost what I was going to say, to be fair. Go ahead.
Well, the junior ISAs, we do some of them for clients where you can pay up to £9,000 for a child into a junior ISA. And there was talking about a geeky stat. There is still a current, I think it's still available, where for a 16-year-old, they can actually put £29,000 into ISAs, 9,000 into a JISA, and then 20,000 into an ISA, but they might be closing that loop. And some of my clients don't like JISAs because they don't want to put money into a pot where at 18 it becomes a normal ISA and then the child has access to what could be a lot of money. So it depends on how you educate your child about investments and what they're going to use that money for. But the other type of ISA that we use is a LISA, a lifetime ISA, where if you satisfy the criteria, you can pay up to £4,000 a year into it. It's part of your 20 grand a year allowance, but then you get your 25% bonus on every £4,000. You get 1,000 to put towards a house. If you're, you've got to be 18 up to age 50, 40 to qualify?
Yes. 18 to 39 to qualify, but you can then contribute up until age 50. And then you can access it for purchases for your first main home. £350,000, I think, or retirement.
Something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
from age 60. Yeah.
But the junior ISA is a great opportunity for you as a parent to teach your children about the importance of savings. So not a great investment strategy, but it's the truth, from a very young age. I think it's about 11. On their birthday, each of my children, I used to buy them a share. We'd buy it in their junior ISA. My son would typically buy things like Apple and Amazon and things like that. My daughter would buy Disney and things. It's not an investment strategy. It's a learning experience. And I think if you can teach your children about saving, the importance of growth and health. My son's really into investing now, really, really. My daughter is interested, but less so. But she understands the importance of it. So these are lessons that we try and pass down generations, really, with our children. And I don't know about you, but we spend time with our clients' children. Most of the time it's on Teams. I think they feel more comfortable being online than coming into the office. But just to educate them and to teach them about, the importance of good money management. We mostly do that before they go off to university, because that's a big pivotal point, really, for their life.
Oh, that's tremendous. That's tremendous, because it's not something that's taught in all schools. I've noticed that in some schools they have part of the curriculum talks a bit about this from sort of 15, 16 onwards but I don't think it goes to the same extent, and really put it into perspective to get a feel for how money works, how investing, how debt works. And it's great that you're going into schools to do that. There should be more of it, definitely.
I'm smiling because my children's headmaster now kind of avoids me, and he says to my wife and my son, he's like, "I'm going to what your dad's coming. He's going to be talking to me about how to get financial planning into schools." But I'm passionate about it. You know, that's one of my big, hairy, audacious goals is to get money management into schools before I retire. So I might be working for a very long time, or I might be lucky. I don't know, but that's what I'd like to do.
You've just reminded me that a BHAG, which I always find an amusing acronym, that's a Brett Davison thing, isn't it? A big, hairy, audacious goal. He uses that.
He does use it, but it's from a book. I'm trying to think what the book's called, but it's from a book.
Yeah, it sounds like a Roald Dahl type acronym, a BHAG. Yeah, brilliant. So it talks about ISAs and pensions. We talked a bit about CGT allowance and using that. You can use your marriage allowance, and transfer part of your allowance if you're not using it, the $12,570 to your partner, and save a bit of money. I do think, and it's important to understand, or at least make sure your advisors au fait with the personal allowance and the various thresholds and bands, because if you are aware of things like your tax code and you are aware of how aware the allowances are, if your income, for example, is £110,000 and it's over 100,000, you're losing £1 of your personal allowance, £2 of your personal allowance for every £1 you earn over 100,000. So there's this band, as you alluded to earlier, between 100 grand and just over 125,000, where you can get 60% tax relief. And if I saw someone, and I have clients where they show me their P60, 110 grand last year, I said, "Did you make a pension contribution?" No. I was like, wow. Can you imagine if it cost you £40 to get £100 back?
Yeah.
That's 60% relief.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Is I think where people miss this a lot of the time is with P11Ds and things. So they'll have their salary. They might think, I'm on 100,000 salary, but they kind of forget they got a £5,000 or £10,000 bonus, or they got some P11D benefits. All these things go into the mix to pay your margin, lose your personal allowance. So
and they've got more income. They might have interest on cash, and they might have some dividend income from shares that they have. And if you look at all of your income, which you need to do, that's what pushes you through the bands. But then there's an order of how it's taxed. It's salary and benefits in kind first, and rental incomes, and then after that it's dividends later. And so you go through the different the order of them as to how they're taxed. So it's all geeky, but if you know it, you'll be able to take action to save some tax.
So, Paul, we kind of almost alluded to just now about bonds, offshore bonds, onshore bonds and things. Should we sort of talk a little bit more about those, just so people have got a bigger picture?
Let's do it. Offshore bonds. Right, go on. What do you use them for?
Normally for tax. So we like to diversify with investments, but we also like to, I think I've been before, diversify with tax wrappers, because we don't know what the tax rate's going to be in the future. So by diversifying with tax wrappers, we're hedging our clients' bets and giving them a better chance of a more successful outcome. So order priority, as we've said, pensions, ISAs, and then we've got a general account and an offshore bond. So if you've sold a business or you've come into a big inheritance, you're quite quickly going to max out your other allowances. So we've got these two wrappers, a general account and an offshore bond. And I like to use them both. And I like to use the offshore bond, particularly because of this thing called gross roll-up. So an offshore bond has no limit on how much money you can put into it. So you can put in £1 million+ pounds. It grows without tax within the bond, and it's available for you to withdraw at a future date. And you pay basically income tax on the gain when you take the money out at a future date. But the way the bond works, it's an insurance contract, so you can assign the bond. So you could assign the bond to lower tax rate payers. So let's say, for example, you're helping your children through university, or you want to help your children with a house deposit or something. Rather than you encashing some of that bond or taking money of that bond and paying higher rates of income tax on it, you can assign segments of this bond to your children for whatever purposes you might need, or assign it off into a trust. So it starts becoming more tax efficient. That's what we call a chargeable lifetime transfer. And after 7 years, roughly, it'll be outside of your estate. So it's a nice contract. It's a nice contract. I like it. But it does take a little bit of time to get your head around, because the way I've explained it there is a very simplistic version.
They are confusing, aren't they? Because there can be between 100 and 1,000 often segments of this bond. And when we use the term bond, some clients might think, well, isn't that a corporate bond or a government bond, a gilt, or isn't that a term bond, which is in cash, a fixed rate savings bond? And then there's premium bonds. But ultimately, when we talk about an investment bond, an offshore investment bond, it's a single premium investment bond. It's a life insurance product, isn't it? And it's because it's non-income producing, which sounds really odd. It's tax efficient, and if it's offshore, you're only getting what's called gross a bit of withholding tax on the bond. But the provider that we both use, Transat, their offshore area, if you like, where they use is the Isle of Man, and it's sort of the way to think about it, I would suggest, is once you've filled, your ISAs, your pensions, your general account, and you've just got surplus monies. See, if you've sold your business, or if you've come into a lot of money, or you've got a big bonus, and you think, well, I'll go through these bands, I'll pay down debt, top up cash, ISA, pension, GIA. After that, it's very often offshore bond, especially if you're a higher or additional rate taxpayer. And if you want to gift monies into a trust, because it's non-income producing, it's very tax efficient. So the minimum usually for me when I do it is probably 250,000. It's not the sort of thing you do with £50,000. You wouldn't put that into an offshore one typically.
No, because what you want to do is you want to keep enough money in your general account to fund your ISA for a few years. So you've got the money there. But this really, an offshore bond is for growth money. Allow the money to grow and compound over time in a very tax efficient way. And arguably... And
to take a withdrawal from in the future.
Yeah, so we don't typically do so we're going into a bit of detail with the offshore bond now, but there's two ways you can take money out. You can encash segments, like Paul just mentioned, they're 100 or 1,000 mini bonds together, so you can encash a segment of that and take the money out. Or you can do a thing called 5% of the original withdrawal, so the original investment amount, sorry. We don't typically do that. We do the encashments. We do look at both. We explain it to the clients. Yeah. Without getting too geeky,
I did a 5% withdrawal because it's tax free, isn't it? For 20 years, it's tax free. It's tax deferred.
Tax code, yeah. So, and that's really the reason why we don't do it. One of our, and I think I alluded to it with the ISA and the pension. One of our biggest concerns is not necessarily just the tax rates today, but what will the tax rates be in the future? And when you take the 5% withdrawals, you are basically taking 5% of the original investment. So after 20 years, you've taken all the investment out. Therefore, all the money you take out thereafter is taxed at income tax rates. So 20 years down the line, if interest rates are a lot higher, or if other people are benefiting from this, they're going to pay the tax rates themselves. So we kind of think if you have the money, you pay the tax. We don't not do the 5% withdrawals, but more often than not, we'll just in cash segments. And hey, it's horses for courses. It's just a way of doing things, and things suit people differently at the different times. It's just financial planning, I think, is a science and an art. We have the science of the numbers, we do the calculations, there's logic behind it. But because we're often dealing with the future and dealing with personalities in families, that's where the art comes in. And it varies for different people.
That expression, horses for courses, that's tremendous. I mean, you've got to get these things in. I'm trying to count the amount of bingo words that come in there. My wife and I used to have a joke about this. We used to try and get words like freaky deaky or what other kind of weird words would we get into a conversation? Freaky deaky. No, but he's trying to have a bit of a laugh. I can't honestly, God, some more will come to me now. The sort of terms and the terminology and the things. Blue sky thinking, that's a terrible one.
Yeah,
let's take this offline. Oh, it's even worse. let's take this offline. Yeah. That's squared away. Let's square this one away. That's an army expression, and it's squared away.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know if it translates to a lot of it. It's a lot of British and English euphemisms, the way that we say things. Whereas in America, they say different things, don't they?
Yeah,
it's always tee one up or batter up, or what do they say? Step up to the plate. That's a terrible one. Step up to the plate. Yeah.
We should do a whole session on word bingo.
I know. They're good. Right, talking about boring tax planning again and ways to be tax efficient. Did you know, Mr. Listener, Mrs. Listener, that premium bonds are tax-free? Fantastic. And you put £50,000 a year. Do you know, a lot of people get really excited about premium bonds as if they're going to somehow make you a lot of money. The stats and the chances are that you're not going to make much money at all, and less than a savings account. So if you do like premium bonds, and I like them to an extent where they're sort of out of sight, out of mind, little emergency pot, that some of our clients have, and they get excited when they get the little letter through and they get a little win of £25 or £75. But they are tax-free, and they are something you can have. Do your clients use premium bonds? Do you ever recommend them at all? Or?
So as a general rule of thumb, for most clients, we suggest having no more than 6 months of their annual expenditure on deposit, plus any planned expenditure for the next 3 years. So they look and say, okay, we've got this much spending going out. We've got these things coming up, changing the car, doing a bit of renovations on the house, big holiday, that kind of thing. We'll hold that on deposit, and sometimes I'll hold that in premium bonds. But other than that, we want the client to invest the money tax efficiently, so that they're beating inflation.
They're backed by the Treasury, so they're very safe. You can never say guaranteed, but they're as safe and as guaranteed as you can make them. And so I think some people like them because of that. But you are limited to the $50,000 a year. What about other tax efficient vehicles? Do you ever use VCTs, EIS, cease schemes? Do you ever use any of them?
No, very, very, very rarely. We have a number of clients. We have a number of clients who invest in them. We can talk to them about them, help them make informed decisions, and stuff like that, work with them together. But what's the expression? Don't let the tax tail wag the dog. These things give great tax breaks for a reason. They're very high risk, very volatile, and very often very illiquid. So it's not our area. We want to create peace of mind and comfort, and not people worrying about things.
But it's to do with risk as well, isn't it? Because if you can save, as you can, in venture capital trusts and enterprise investment schemes, 30% income tax and up to 50% with small enterprise investment schemes, it's all well and good saving 30%. But if you lose all of the money in 3 years' time, which can happen, where then you think, well, I've lost all of it, or I've lost 70% of it. I've gained some tax. So you got to hold them for between 3 and 5 years, depending on the vehicle. VCT's 5 years, cease and EIS 3 years. But I think that if you know the firm you're investing in and you've already ticked a lot of the boxes and it's a bit of fun money and you happen to have particularly high income, and you're a high rate or additional rate taxpayer, it can be useful because there's capital gains tax exempt if you hold it for 3 years. But as a general rule of thumb, I don't think for the majority of clients, and none of our clients, maybe it's the odd one, but 0.01%, you just don't need them. And it's that idea of complexity that just because you get, you see it and you say, oh, this tax relief, or you see a vehicle that's complicated, it's somehow better. The reality is that you don't really need much more than an ISA, pension, and a general account, and for the odd client, an offshore bond, and that is it. Take that away from today. You don't need, even if you've got 10 million quid, you don't need EIS and VCTs.
Do you know what? You hit the nail on the head. I was just about to say, a client who's got a £10 million portfolio or a client who's got maybe a £100,000 portfolio, they are very, very similar. Very, very similar. The approach is very similar. We don't have to get more complex as we get higher up the wealth band. I think a lot of private banks will do that because they want to make you, one, feel important, and they also want to, two, lock you in. But keeping things nice and clean, nice and simple, allowing you to compound your wealth over time is the way forward. Is there anything else you want to raise, or should we wrap that up there?
No, I think you can do your amazing wrap up as you normally do, and then we'll move on. But go on, what have you learned today? Anything?
Well, no, I have actually. I always learn stuff when I speak to you. But genuinely, I think what we're saying is, hey, pensions are actually a really great investment vehicle and very, very tax efficient. We got our income tax breakback, and also they're outside of our state for inheritance tax. So that's our first point of call. We like ISAs, and we got ISA accounts for the kids, and also if we're looking to buy our first home. So ISAs really play an important role too, and they allow us to tax diversify as well as investment diversify. So there's really good things there. If we're fortunate to have a big chunk of money come in through a business sale or inheritance or something, it's not the end of the world. We can then look at general accounts and offshore bonds as well to further diversify our wrappers. We've got these 4 tax wrappers that offer really good vehicles for us to grow our wealth. And the likes of EISs, VCTs, etc., are available, and they could be right for some people, but it's probably the minority of people who are really going to need those things because the risk behind them are just so high. And there's a whole raft of tax bans and tax allowances that we can look at, from your married couples allowance to work from home allowance, that kind of thing. On those things, you really either need to work with a good tax advisor or a good financial planner who's going to come up with those and say, hey, look, before the end of the tax year, let's do this, this, and this so that we don't get penalized. How's that?
On your microphone, we've all got that was really good, by the way. But on your mic, what I was going to say is, as an observation, on your microphone, I think you've got the Morgan Freeman setting or something like that. You've got a really rich voice, and I could listen to you all day. You should do some public speaking. You really should do some public speaking. Do that. I think that you're a little bit quick there. I think you're a bit quick in your performance there, your wrap up, but okay. If you spoke a little bit slower, I would just, you could do, those sleep apps? I would have the Warren Shoot sleep app where you're talking to me. Not because you put me to sleep, but because it's a soothing noise.
Brilliant.
That was a compliment, by the way.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering. I wasn't too sure. Tell me, what's your 2 pennies worth this week?
Okay. So my 2 pennies worth this week, I've got a book recommendation, and I've read this guy's first book. It's Same as Ever by Morgan Housel. Yeah. And I tell you what, I've been reading it recently. I'm going to read out for our dear listeners a 3/4 of a page. Right? There's a this month what I decided to do, and it goes into part of my current thinking. At the end of our month newsletter in March, we have an article on setting expectations, and I just thought it up because if your expectations are really quite high for anything that you do, and then you don't achieve them, you can just be miserable. And I was trying to sort of think about the concept of happiness and expectations. And then in this book, in one of the chapters, this book's 23 individual chapters, and one of them is called Expectations and Reality. And you got to listen to this. This really sat well with me. It says, the first rule of happiness is low expectations. That's the sort of subtitle. Your happiness depends on your expectations more than anything else. So in a world that tends to get better for most people most of the time, an important life skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. It's also one of the hardest. A common storyline of history goes like this. Things get better, wealth increases, technology brings new efficiencies, and medicine saves lives. The quality of life goes up, But people's expectations then rise by just as much, if not more, because those improvements also benefit other people around you whose circumstances you anchor to. Happiness is little changed despite the world improving. It's been like this forever. Montesquieu wrote 275 years ago, if you only wish to be happy, this could be easily accomplished. But we wish to be happier than other people. And this is always difficult, for we believe others to be happier than they are. I've only got a little bit more, but listen to this, right? John D. Rockefeller never had penicillin, sunscreen, or Advil, which is obviously American for paracetamol. But you can't say a low-income American with Advil and sunscreen today should feel better off than Rockefeller, because that's not how people's heads work. People gauge their well-being relative to those around them, and luxuries become necessities in a remarkably short period of time when the people around you become better off. Investor Charlie Munger once noted that the world isn't driven by greed, it's driven by envy. Isn't that just... Wow. What did you think of that?
Yeah, John, I'm listening to the book myself. I have Spotify Premium. That's my book I'm listening to at the moment. So I've been past that bit. So it is a good book. It's a very good book.
I loved it.
I didn't think it was Charlie Munger who said that quote. I thought it was Warren Buffett. So I have to. I'm sure Morgan's correct because his books are great. But I always thought it was Warren Buffett.
You can email Morgan and tell him he's wrong. It's a close personal friend of Warren Buffett's. I think you're wrong, but obviously Charlie Munger's passed away, hasn't he? So we can't say that. But listen, the book is totally worth reading, and there's different lovely sections in it. And the original book he wrote called The Psychology of Money. It's a book that I give to my clients as well, how to think about money, and it's really well worth reading. He just writes in a style that's just...
Last night, I was at a CSI branch meeting. Okay, so our Chartered Institute of Securities Investments, our association, we have local regional branch meetings. I was at one of those, 21 people in the room, behavioral scientists speaking in the front of the room. He's absolutely fantastic. He said, okay, anyone in the room who'd read Psychology of Money? I was the only one in 21, 22 people who put their hand up.
Really?
Full of financial planners, investment managers, everything else. I was like, wow. Even my son, who was with me, he said, well, I've read some of it. Yeah, I was quite bizarre. It's quite bizarre. So, okay. So,
have you got any 2 pennies worth for us?
I do. My 2 pennies worth actually come from Bella. So it's a bit of a Bella show this week. But she said to me, Dad, look, you really need to get this app, and it's called Bean. I was like, what's Bean about, Belle? Tell me about it. And it's where have you been? So you put in the app all the countries and cities that you've been to, and it just links it. It tells you a bit about them, everything else, and you can see geographically where you've been and stuff. So in our hallway, we have a map and we have pins of all the places we've been to, but this is on your phone. And it's fantastic. And I thought I was pretty well traveled, but I've only been to 13% of the world and been to 27 countries. So one of my goals in life, other than getting financial or money management into schools, is to visit every safe country in the world. So I've got some traveling to do. But it's a great app. It's called
How many
Bean.
countries are there in the world?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look on the app.
Have a guess.
I don't know, 170, 150.
It changes, but according to the worldometers.info, there's 193. I used to think it was over 200, but I think it changes, as I say. So there's a lot of countries there, that we've not been to, and it sounds really good. That app, though, I love the idea of that because I'm gonna have a go now and put the places I've been to, and then it makes you think, where do you want to go? Yeah,
it's good. It's very good. In travel, broadens the mind. It's great, particularly for the youngsters. So encourage that definitely. Q&A, Paul.
So I've got the quotes and anecdotes section. I have got a quote for you today from Benjamin Franklin, who wrote a letter in 1789 to the French scientist Jean-Baptiste Leroy. And he said, our new constitution is now established. Everything seems to promise it will be durable. But in this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes. And it's true. It's definitely true, if you ask me. There's no scenario where you'll just outlive death. And also taxes are always inevitable. So if you can do things to mitigate taxes legitimately, which is tax avoidance, which is allowed, but don't do the tax evasion one. That's not allowed. So that's my little quote. What about yourself, Warren? Have you got a quote or an anecdote for us this week?
I do. And Lewis, who works for me, came into the office the other day and said, have you ever heard of the budget tipple? And I said, no, what's the budget tipple? And he said to me, during the budget, the Chancellor is allowed to consume a small alcoholic drink while delivering his budget. The drink is typically a glass of brandy, but ordinarily, no alcohol is allowed to be consumed in the House of Commons. And I didn't know that. I had to look it up, and it's true, yeah. So it's not often done.
Is that to relax his nerves?
I guess so.
Is that to relax Jeremy's?
Or to celebrate the more money that they're bringing in. Who knows?
Yeah,
Who knows?
maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. For our listeners, I have actually put in the show notes a tax poem as well by the Adam Smith Institute, and it's quite fun because the last line of it says, "When he's done, do not relax. It's time to apply the inheritance tax." But it's a tax poem worth having a quick note through because it just demonstrates how many types of taxes there are and what we get taxed on. So it's just reality. And I think we shouldn't get too hung up on it and say, oh, be too downbeat about it. We got to have taxes, haven't we? Because they need to be, things need to be paid for, from the NHS to education to the economy, social welfare. But I think it's getting that balance right that's quite tricky.
Anything else, Paul? Is that you for done?
Well, I've enjoyed speaking to you today. As I say, I've noticed the rich tone to your voice. I'm going to take away. I'm maybe to get some voice lessons or something to try and improve my tone. But I really enjoy. Oh, is it? I think I might have finally sorted out my microphone because I realised last week that you told me it was back to front. So that's why it sounded echoey.
Yeah.
My Lord. Technology.
Yeah, I know. We both had it with technology. Last week it was me, but your mic sounds much better this week. Yeah, I think that's a wrap for today. Thanks for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. Do leave a comment and any questions you have, and we look forward to answering them in a future podcast. So see you next one. Take care.
See you guys. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's discussion. If you're enjoying this show, please subscribe to our podcast. It's a great way to support us. If you have questions or comments about this podcast or topics you'd like to suggest for the show, please put these in the comments section on YouTube. Remember, if you find yourself humming our theme song for the next week, it's not a sign of brainwashing. It's just a testament to our awesomeness, or possibly a mild earworm. Consult a doctor if symptoms persist. This show is designed to be informational only and does not constitute investment or financial advice. Please contact a regulated financial advisor before taking any specific action.